Well, normally we have a countdown. We don't have a countdown this time. It's just, we're on. Hello, everybody. My clock is actually still chiming one, so we're right on time. This is the August, believe it or not, edition. The second August we've done this for Answer the Call to Conscious Leadership. I'm Karen Heller. My co-host is not present today. We do have a great panelist for you to talk about toxic positivity, to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do here and why we do it. Last year, around May, I started a community on LinkedIn called the C3, which stands for Corporate Consciousness Co-op. It's for people who, like Lawrence and I, are committed to co-creating a more conscious corporate landscape. What we do in this group is we host events like this, and we'll be hosting our first conference in November 5th and 6th, which will be virtual. And it's really all about taking the practitioners of conscious leadership, as well as the people in corporate leadership who are committed to leading consciously, and having them share their secret sauce. We're all out there creating ripples. The idea is that by co-creating, we will turn these ripples into accelerated, more powerful waves of conscious change. And today we have Dr. Laura Dowling. Laura, I'm so glad that you're finally here. We had you scheduled for a different topic last year. You had an emergency, but I'm so glad that you're able to make it and talk about this topic, which was chosen by our C3 community of being important to them. And you are a leadership and change management consultant and adjunct professor. So welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Now, I wrote a little bit about toxic positivity so that people understood why we're talking about it and its impact in corporations. I definitely want to start there. And I think that, and by the way, if you're here and you're watching, chime in, make a comment, ask questions, let us know you're here, let us know where you're watching us from. And right now, if you're here, let us know if you've experienced toxic positivity in your workplace or in your life. And that would look like a bunch of different things, but basically it's making you feel bad for feeling bad. That's kind of how the simple way that I put it, when it's not allowed to feel negative emotions, when you're pressured or coerced, or even if it's just implied, that you should be positive during something that's clearly not a positive experience, and the harm that can do for an individual. We're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about the harm that can do in your corporate culture. So, Dr. Laura, tell us a little bit about, how you define toxic positivity.
So toxic positivity really imposes positive thinking as the only solution to problems. Okay. And it demands that a person avoid negative thinking and negative emotions, and expressing these negative emotions. Okay. So we cannot dispute the power of positive thinking, right? It works. We know it works from a neurological perspective. Toxic positivity really demands positivity from people when they don't feel positive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So some examples of that would be a death of a child.
Mm-hmm.
There's no negating that is going to stir up some negative feelings. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Science also tells us, and the mental health statistics also tells us, that to ignore negative emotions is not healthy. It exacerbates this. Okay.
What we resist persists.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And the trouble is that if you resist it long enough, it goes to the subconscious level and you don't even realize that this is impacting your life.
What does that look like when it's subconscious and it's impacting your life?
Okay, so anxiety and depression is one of those things. Okay, and science tells us that our mental positioning system, our brain, it really is our perception of events, and it comes from genetics. We may have a predisposition to anxiety and depression genetically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, neurologically, if we are born with a predisposition to anxiety or depression, we likely have an absence of neurochemicals in the brain. This is a physical. I mean, this is not thinking. This is physically, we do not have the correct chemicals in our brain. Okay. But if we're told constantly, don't think that way, be positive, act like you're happy, blah, 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 we don't address the lack of neurochemicals in our brain, which is physical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it goes subconscious. We think something's wrong with us and we just try to muddle through. The danger is the pain is to such a high degree that we try to take off the edge. Okay. Which results in addiction of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So we often group this mental health with addiction, and the
Mm-hmm.
statistics are mind blowing. And if I could take a few minutes to share some statistics on mental health and some statistics on what's happening in the workplace because of a forcing of this positive toxicity and a failure to address the negative emotions. Okay, I'm going to read because I don't want to get the statistics wrong. Okay, so just
Please. Please let us know what these statistics are. I'm very interested.
So I'm looking at statistics that were published in June of 2020. So that's pre-COVID. So we know COVID has created complete havoc. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance abuse. Okay. 1 in 6 US youth age 6 to 7 experience a mental health disorder each year. Little kids. Half of all lifetime mental illness begins at age 14. Okay. We
Mm-hmm.
were never taught how to effectively deal with our emotions until recently. Okay. So these statistics, in a lot of ways, aren't surprising. This is crazy. The average delay between the onset of a mental illness symptom and treatment is 11 years.
Wow.
We stuff it. Okay. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34. This is our new leaders coming up. Okay. Crazy.
Yeah.
Many people suffer from more than one. There's a lot of dual diagnosis. More than 70% of youth in juvenile justice system have a diagnosis of a mental illness. Okay. Most common illnesses in the US are anxiety disorders, which affect 40 million adults, 18.1% of the population. This is crazy.
These are diagnoses too. This is with that 40%, but pre-COVID, was that an estimate or is that a reported cases, reported diagnoses?
Statistical
Okay.
diagnoses. These aren't these.
So we can imagine there's probably a bunch more that go 11 years before they're diagnosed and treated.
Here's the rub here, Karen. We get a diagnosis of anxiety or depression, but I want to share some other stuff with you.
Yeah,
That's
please.
recent, which really came about as my examination of this work culture. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we as leaders do a better job managing performance? We make an assumption that we hire workers and they show up and they leave everything at home. They
Right.
don't, they bring it. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a leader, my job is half managing the mental stuff that's going on and half managing the business stuff. Okay. And I spent
Mm-hmm.
over 25 years in the healthcare administration space. I was heavily involved in the upgrade of diagnosis codes a couple years ago. They hadn't been upgraded in 36 years. It's tied to reimbursement on the medical claim side. As of 10/1/2019, we have 6 diagnoses that are related to workplace stress. I'm going to read them to you. Threat of job loss, stressful work schedule, discord with boss and workmates, uncongenial work environment, other physical and mental strain related to work, burnout. Okay. When ICD-11, the next version hits, which was anticipated for 1/1 of 2022,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to change the description of burnout to read an occupational phenomenon, a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress characterized by three dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism, reduced professional efficacy. For those of you that are not in the healthcare space, when a diagnosis appears on a claim and that diagnosis is work related, the liability shifts to the employer under workers' comp.
Mm.
And organizations, because the costs are so astronomical, and I'll share some of those with you, they're saying we got to handle this. We cannot afford to not handle it. So you're seeing a lot of coaching in organizations separate from my job is not going to be coaching and process and performance.
Mm-hmm.
There are separate areas to help folks coach folks through whatever their issues are.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing stuff like meditation rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a encouragement of exercise. We're having yoga from 11 to 12 and 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
We know that biologically it kicks off the right chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So organizations are definitely addressing this because we understand now what we've been doing doesn't work. The rub is with this kind of thing is to embrace the negative feelings and explore. If somebody lost a child, that is very valid and they should feel terrible. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The point is address those negative feelings. Okay. Move through them effectively so they're not stuffed and tapping on your shoulder your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And then work to increase your positive mindset. But you must address the negative. Stuffing doesn't work.
You just said a lot. I want to break some of that down. So you went through 5 medical codes for workplace toxic positivity that impacts mental health. And I whoever's here watching, whether you're live or whether you're watching the replay, feel free, if you are free to do so, to let us know if you've experienced any of that. And I even well-meaning leaders can be guilty of toxic positivity. I mean, just saying something like, if you're trying to reframe it for them, in a coach, but you're like, oh, well, look at the bright side. That can be toxic positivity, right? I mean, it's just like, well, I can look at the bright side, but right now I'm here in this emotion. You can't just, that is toxic. It's like suppression of that negative emotion. Smile. Now, neurologically, right, and you can confirm this, I believe, smiling does, if you do it for so long, release those good chemicals, those good hormones. Yes. But if you're told to smile, then there's all these secondary and tertiary emotions that come into play. And even if you smile, and you put those emotions away for a little while, they're still going to be there, and they're still going to be impacting the rapport that you have with your team.
That's exactly right. And let me tell you the science behind that neurologically. Okay. Mm-hmm. The brain is so powerful. Okay. The neuroscience has recently come out that it is a master at discerning BS. Mm. And it's not okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So synapses are going to fire and you're not going to feel right. Mm-hmm. So putting on a happy face when you do not have time to address the negativity, it doesn't work. The science tells us it doesn't work.
Now, this obviously doesn't just happen in the workplace. It happens at home too. I was actually just told to smile, which is why it was top of mind to me. Smile for my kids' sake, through rough times. I know there are a lot of parents who are also leaders, and we have these things bleeding into each other, especially as we're home and we're at work. It feels a little crazy, I would say, to try to separate work from home when they're bleeding into each other naturally in the first place. all these people who were home working with their kids, and they had to parent and work at the same time. So they have work stress and they're in front of their kids. What's the advice you have around that situation? I mean, do you put on a happy face for your kids? What impact can that have if you're not, what should you model for your kids in that situation?
So that's a tricky area, but let me start with saying leadership at its basic level is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you're just responsible for yourself, you have to lead yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have a family you're leading. You have go in a work environment and you have responsibility to direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line between modeling the way and being true to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding your own negativity. So, especially with children,
Mm-hmm.
children can sense that there's something wrong with mom, whether she's smiling or not. So it's often kind of negates their instinct, right? Because we know something's wrong with mom, even though she's smiling, we just know.
Yeah.
So saying no, nothing's wrong really is lying. Okay. Yeah. Address it, bring it to the table. Mommy's feeling bad because I really wanted that job. I was counting on it. I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling all these negative emotions. I feel like I'm not valuable. I'm not worthy. And what all these things.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay because I'm going to move through it. And if you give me a hug, I'll feel a little bit better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Don't negate or deny it. Bring it to the table. It's okay to feel bad sometimes. There's, a woman that's in a physically and emotionally abusive relationship, and you tell her, hey, be positive, stick your chin up, be positive, will remain in that relationship longer.
Yeah.
And it's life-threatening.
Danger. Yeah.
So they're signals, they're messages that say your brain says something's wrong. I have to figure out what it is. And the process of learning to understand when you're not feeling comfortable. And I'll just give you a backstory with me. I took my son to Thomas Jefferson University Center for Integrative Medicine. He was ADHD, depression, and anxiety. So 3 diagnoses. Didn't want to take the the prescribed medicine, didn't feel right. I'm like, what's the solution?
Yeah.
So I took him there. He had a test, his neurotransmitter levels 0. Well, it's like no gas in the car. It can't run.
Wow.
He can't be happy. So we got that figured out. We saw a Dr. Andrew Newberg, who is a world-renowned neurologist, who is credited with finding the God gene. We are genetically predisposed for a higher power, and we are genetically built for community.
I've heard that called the Godical.
Yes. So we're there for several months, all kinds of tests, brain scans to make sure we're in the last few visits, and Dr. Newberg's there with his pad, and he says, you both could benefit from a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And I didn't do this, Karen, but this was the picture in my head. I was like, I'm good. We're here for him. We got to fix him. What's going on? And he convinced me to take this course, and I did. And it changed my life. Wow. And now I don't even know at a conscious level what's bothering me, but there's this tingling behind my belly button that sends a message to my brain that says something is amiss. So go through your checklist. What's making you uncomfortable? What's making you feel anxiety? What's causing and I learned that through taking an 8-week course.
Learning the physical cues that something is wrong. Yes.
Physical cues.
Yeah.
And we have to teach our children these tools. We have to say, it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to cry. But what's the next step? You got to experience. Pain has a purpose. There's a question from Gavin. Can you see that?
Yep. Yep, I can.
A lot of what you speak of implies being vulnerable and having courage to speak to your colleagues openly. What is your advice for people who are naturally introverted or shy about being open and vulnerable?
Great question.
That's a great question. Okay. Um, a lot of what we have done in the past shied away from being open and vulnerable. It just was not acceptable in the workplace, and it was seen as a weakness or negativity, weakness or, and was very negative. Currently, in leadership development and program development, and especially in team works, teaming, the path or the solution to improved performance is vulnerability, is a display of vulnerability. Okay. You mentioned introversion. Okay. Totally get it. Um, Introverts are not going to be, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Okay. What is possible to do with that? And it may be first one on one with an introvert. I've had a lot of direct reports who I know are introverts because they took the personality test. I don't ever expect them to speak up in a meeting. I
Mm-hmm.
don't expect them to share their vulnerabilities verbally in a meeting. But what I did was I had individual meetings. My introverts shared some of their vulnerabilities, and I asked for permission to share that with the team. Okay. A lot of people are not comfortable speaking about it.
Yeah.
And the observations over time was crazy because the vulnerabilities are now up on the board. We all understand each other's vulnerabilities. And my introverts developed a comfort level in having conversation about it.
We talk a lot in almost every call. We talk about psychological safety as well. I mean, that's something that you have to intentionally infuse your culture with, psychological safety, having people feel safe doing that. And if you don't have a boss that you feel safe talking to, I think the key is to find someone you feel psychologically safe talking to. Would you agree?
Karen, I will tell you that there is a huge paradigm shift in leadership development.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it is now a requirement that leaders have interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence. It's coming up in job descriptions.
Oh yeah.
High EI, high interpersonal communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, that wasn't it. I've been in situations where the top sales guy making the most money for the company, was let go because nobody wanted to work with him. It's a
Mm-hmm.
joke.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're seeing this massive paradigm shift, and you're going to see uh increase in job descriptions for high EI and interpersonal skills. And the World Economic Forum, who projects skills for the next 10, 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
it's an entire shift because we have AI, we have machine learning that are doing most of the stuff for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? The accounting, the finance, the budgeting, it's all computerized.
Yep.
There's a significant gap and absence of leaders with emotional intelligence that can manage change, that can help individuals manage change, that can lead head and heart balanced.
And
Okay.
to
So,
not have those leaders puts your company in a huge liability. Um, and, I mean, so if you are right now in a company where your leadership doesn't have these kinds of skills and you're not developing these kinds of skills within your talent, come into C3. If you're not there already, we have a ton of experts and practitioners who would love to help your company build those capacities because they are essential. So Gavin, I hope you're somewhere where you have somebody who can feel psychological safe with, who has those EI, interpersonal communication skills. But if not, feel free to contact me or Dr. Laura. I'm going to volunteer you if you don't
yes,
mind
please do.
directly through LinkedIn.
So
So, or anybody else out there.
there's a lot of leadership development programs. Few of them, I have one that's doing this, is offering education and training and some core stuff, but is addressing stuff like emotional intelligence, change resilience,
Mm-hmm.
change leadership, okay, with concurrent coaching. So we're doing the traditional stuff in front of the classroom, the assessments, but we're live helping people address these issues as they occur in real time. Okay. And we've all had bad bosses. I got
Mm-hmm.
punished for knocking it out of the park one time. Like, whoa, the younger generation, not tolerating it. So
Mm-mm.
if organizations do not address these things, they're going to have nobody to work for them. It's
Yep.
that critical.
Yeah, the talent gap is painful for a lot of organizations right now. They're feeling it, and the tide is shifting. And 2020 just kind of pushed that
Yes.
into hyper mode, for
We
sure.
did well because our children aren't putting up with it.
Yeah.
My son says, "Are you crazy for working like that?" He comes and he pulls me off the computer. He goes, "You have Mr. Google eyes and you're slurring your typing. It's time to get off." But that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
You
Work till you drop.
you did what you were told. You didn't,
Mm-hmm.
if you were disagreed or weren't unhappy, especially if it was in school, you
Yeah.
didn't say, you kind of did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Our, they tell us, I'm not doing it. My niece, she graduated from St. Joe's and she said, bad anxiety and depression for years,
Mm-hmm.
eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
She moved to Italy. No anxiety, no depression. She's doing what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that's like, I was so proud of her for having the courage to do that.
Yeah. It takes courage. Good for her.
Very, very crazy. But I want to talk about one thing, a couple more things before we move on to the next section. And these are some additional statistics I want to share with everybody because this
Sure.
is so real. And we spend 1/3 of our time at work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the research suggests that the work, home goes to work and work goes home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it impacts our lives. It impacts how we parent, what happens to us during the day.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to pull these things apart because they're all interrelated. So I want to share a few more statistics with you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
32 legislatures, that's 30 states, 2 territories, have introduced a healthy workplace bill to combat workplace toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Workplace bullying. I'm going to read the definition. Repeated mistreatment of an employee by one or more employees, abusive conduct that is threatening, humiliating, or intimidating, work sabotage, or verbal abuse perceived by the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Perception, okay? Not fact, perception. I feel like you're humiliating me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw some statistics here. This is how crazy it is. 61% of bullies are bosses. 63% operate alone. 29% of victims remain silent. They don't even say a word. 71% of employer reactions are harmful to the victim. 60% of coworker reactions are harmful to the victims. 65% of targets lose their job. So we have the healthy workplace bill, and it is gaining momentum. Okay?
Thank
Because
goodness.
if you're in a abusive work environment
Mm-hmm.
all day, how are you going home in the right state of mind to take care of the kids, do homework, cook dinner, and get the laundry up to snuff? You're emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
This is the physical manifestation, right?
Yeah.
We start getting rashes, headaches, all kinds of stuff. One book you can read is The Body Keeps the Score. It starts here,
Yeah.
here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. It's a huge paradigm shift. Employers are addressing it. $300 billion spent annually on leadership development and workforce development. Okay.
Yeah.
And most of those programs don't work. 83% of the workforce is suffering from work-related stress.
Mm-hmm.
225.8 billion annually in lost productivity due to absenteeism. An additional 150 billion on presenteeism. Presenteeism means the people are showing up. They're not absent,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not engaged. So it becomes an organizational performance issue.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all know that when we are happy or stressed, we are not ourselves. It just sucks the energy out of us, and then, how do we show up at home with a smile? Glad to see the kids off the bus. Let me help you with your homework. Let's get dinner going. Very, very challenging.
Yes.
But definitely being addressed.
I'm glad it's being addressed. I mean, so I've been coaching individuals for 15 years, and I know that it hasn't changed fast enough. There's still too many of my clients who come to me, particularly because their culture is toxic. And sometimes that does look like just being expected to put on your happy face, put your head down, whatever's going on at home, whatever's going on in the world, whatever abuse you're suffering, put it aside. It's not relevant here. And sometimes it's even they're suppressed and celebrating. Like you got a great closed a deal, great, okay, next one. Like all about business. It's denial of the human condition. It's backfiring in unfortunate ways for individuals and for leaders and for organizations.
We are firmly in the relationship or connections era, which is another thing that's driving this paradigm shift. This community, this networking, this social society where we're helping it. We got Facebook, we got all these tools, right? From a leadership perspective, I can tell you that out of probably 20 some bosses, two out of that many were good bosses. Now we are starting to hold leadership accountable for behaviors. And it's coming up in your job review, your performance review. And your direct reports and your peers are evaluating you on that. Okay. Yeah. So I think I published an article early last year, demise of toxic bosses. So there's a real accountability now for all those things that we discussed. You're not going to have any employees. Nobody wants to work with you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work with you. So this ability to create an engaging, hospitable work environment is critical, and there's not much training out there on how to do that. But it's growing.
There isn't C3. That's what we're here doing, right?
Yeah, I have some with the DFW, and of course on the academic side, that's an interesting twist because I am teaching a lot, and I have students come in trying to race through these courses because they think it's going to result in a different job and a different, higher income, different job. And they come back to me years later saying, I'm really not happy with what I'm doing. I'm struggling with my boss. I'm struggling with my teammates. So again, it's the coaching of you must, prior to signing on, assess whether you're going to fit with that hiring manager and whether you're going to fit with that culture. There's about 8 different cultural frameworks that we have. Working at the Whole Foods is going to be a lot different than working at the Security and Exchange Commission.
Let's talk about that for a second, if you don't mind. The service industry, the hospitality industry, entertainment, where you're expected to put on a smile. That's a whole different job expectation, right? How do people who are expected to create a positive experience for other people by being positive themselves, how do they approach their own mental health and ensure that they can still process these emotions and perform at their job when it's the requirement of their job to be positive?
That's a good question that I explored with some folks that worked at Disney.
Okay, great.
Everybody's awesome. Happy at Disney. I'm like, how can that be? How can that be? And a colleague of mine had a son that was a performer there. And Michael and I were down there, and I was talking to him, and like I knew from his mom that there was he was struggling with some things in his personal life, and to look at him perform, I'm like, he looks like the happiest camper out of them all.
Yeah.
And Lisa herself has a background in performance, although she's not performing anymore. But what these folks tell me is, and I understand this because I can do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
When you're performing, it's a button that you turn on.
Mm-hmm.
You get into a character. Okay. And sometimes I got to get into a happy character some days. I don't feel like going to the office and I don't feel like doing what I got to do, but I have to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a button that you turn on. But when I'm at home journaling, I'm exploring my negative feelings, my negative emotions, my fears, my anxiety, my depression. I'm exploring that daily in a journal.
Mm-hmm.
Not ignoring it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So off. You have to turn that button off. Make sure you have time to turn that button off. So you mentioned journaling. You mentioned mindfulness, and tuning into that physical sensation. I don't know if you're ready to move on yet, but I definitely want to include some tips for people to help process their negative emotion when they need to.
Absolutely. I'm ready to move on.
All right, let's talk about it.
Mindfulness and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It changes the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that our perspective often is set. It's like you're taking the same roads to work every day.
Yeah.
That's how the brain fires, synapse firing. And our perspective towards events, people is kind of hardwired.
Mm-hmm.
The brain is very plastic, and it's pretty easy to change it with practice. So there's lots of things you can do: mindfulness, meditation, binaural beats, and solfeggio sounds. I see music behind you.
Can you just distinguish mindfulness from meditation for a minute? Because I think that some people think they're one and the same.
Mindfulness is achieved through meditation. That's quiet time thinking, guided or not guided. Okay. So awareness. Mindfulness is about awareness of how I'm feeling in the present moment. Okay. And meditation, this time that you carve out for thinking with nobody around you, no noise, thinking about what you're thinking. So it's metacognitive.
Mm-hmm.
So they're two slightly different things, but they're very closely related.
So it's not blocking out the thinking, which is what some people think meditation is and struggle with. I can't stop the thoughts. I can't stop, right? That's not it.
So neurologically, don't think about the pink elephant in the room. Your brain is going to think about the pink elephant in the room.
Yeah.
From a neurologic perspective, the brain science says, don't do that. Think about the purple giraffe, right? And it's just how the brain works.
Yeah. So you can zoom in on a detail of something, and that would put you in a state of mindfulness. The details of a leaf or shapes of clouds or
visualization. Okay.
Lines in your hand. Yeah.
Visualization. So I'm a big on positive affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
I am valuable. I'm worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Solfeggio sounds and binaural beats. This music changes the brain. All you need is headphones and your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they often come with these beautiful scenes, these visuals, beautiful oceans, beautiful forests.
Tons of it on YouTube, by the way.
Yes.
Tons of it on YouTube.
And it's free.
Right? The Insight Timer is also a great app that I use. I wake up, I put it on, I spend 10 minutes.
There's apps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calm is another one. Mm-hmm.
Calm is great. I've been on Calm. It's great. I'm big on yoga. It changes your brain chemically. And I can tell you, I can be stressed out, and we're at home now. I can be stressed out, and I put on a 20-minute yoga, and I feel different. It works. I'm telling you, it works. I'm writing a book. It's going to be fall of 2021, fall of this year. That's going to help people understand all this stuff that we're talking about and how to integrate it into a practice, right?
Yes.
So, you know, I think
Habits.
Yoda said there is no try. It's just do.
Mm-hmm.
Try or not try. You just have to do it. So develop a program for yourself. Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
brain likes repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it also likes novelty.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to change up my program a little bit so that my brain thinks it's novel.
And that means you can like even just meditating at different times of day or taking moments at different times of day. I mean, having a ritual is great. That can help too, the repetition, but even switching it up is also neurologically beneficial.
Take a walk, ride
Mm-hmm.
your bike, do some other kind of physical activity, different times of the day, a different voice, right? Sometimes, like, I love Deepak Chopra's voice. It just soothes me.
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while, I have to switch it up. And a good example of this is, remember those yellow stickies back in the day you had all around your computer to help you remember passwords and all this other stuff?
Yep.
After a certain time, they have no effect.
Yes.
You don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to change those yellow stickies.
Mm-hmm.
Make them different colors and put them in different places. Move them
Mm-hmm.
from the refrigerator to the desk,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's all about knowing yourself, knowing what your particular areas that make you uncomfortable and figuring out a plan. Absolutely seek support and community. There's so many groups on Facebook that you can join where there's community involvement that can help you with whatever you're and anything. Positive messages. I have some of them every day. I get a positive message in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So the more we adopt these things as individuals, these practices,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the more we require our leaders to model these, the faster we can create that wave, right?
Yes.
The faster we can create that wave.
Yeah. So modeling. I talked to somebody one time who understood and practiced meditation for herself, but when it came to her team, she didn't want to coerce anybody to meditate. So, which I get, but knowing the benefits of it, how do you as a leader, because you're not going to meditate in front of your team, right? I mean, how do you say this is what I'm doing to take care of my own mental health, and it's worked for me. So
I share
try
that
it.
with them individually, but
Yeah.
Karen, I'll tell you that I have integrated some forms of meditation, okay,
Mm-hmm.
into my team meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning of the team meetings, let's take a minute of silence here. Let's breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe. I have never heard that's never come back to me in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shake off, leave what's outside that door. We're going to work on A, B, and C today. Let's
Mm-hmm.
shake it off. And the feeling is instant. It
Yeah.
changes the tone in the room. And people feel a little bit funny about it, but it's who I am. I'm also feeding you, I'm bringing you pizza every Friday as well. It's part of it, right?
Right.
It's part of creating this holistic, this hospitable, this psychologically safe environment. I've had
Mm-hmm.
people in the middle of a meeting break down in tears.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what to do. Let's take a couple minutes. Let's take a couple minute break.
Yeah.
And hey, tell me what's going on. Do you need
Mm-hmm.
to, what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Do you feel like you want to go home? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to do it any other way. And I can tell you from my personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
as someone who has repeatedly over the years met or exceeded expectations and built teams, it
Mm-hmm.
works every time.
Mm-hmm.
It works every time. And we know how to do this stuff instinctively.
Yeah.
Everything can be solved with a Coke and a sandwich or a Coke and a beer.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop focusing on what is not important. And what is important is the relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Um, I have learned some exercises over time. My acupuncturist way back when
Uh,
actually told me to, and I've taught this actually to my mother-in-law. Um, when you're feeling that tightness in your chest and you can't breathe, she actually taught me to flap my wings for a little while, which looks ridiculous and silly, right? I mean, not something you would just stand up and do in the middle of a meeting, or even out in public. It might feel a little silly, but it actually really worked. Um, have you ever heard that? Like flap your wings, just like, you know,
I
um,
I've never heard of that one. There's a couple yoga poses that do that for me. And you'll
okay.
see me walking down the creek here,
Mm-hmm.
just breathing, excuse my armpits, just breathing with my hands up,
Yeah.
and stretching, rolling my shoulders. So
Yeah.
anything physical that can get your juices flowing, chakra
Mm-hmm.
healing. I don't want to get real weird on you,
Mm-hmm.
but chakra healing, big on the acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are a system of of biology. We live beings, and there's chemicals and energy that floats within
Yeah,
us.
the bioenergetic body. We're just starting to learn more about its implications and how it works. And I mean, there are people who have known a while. They just weren't given a lot of credence. And now the scientific community can confirm we have a bioenergetic body as well as a physical body.
It,
Um,
it's goosebumps
yeah.
because I've been doing the reading and the research, and we are energy beings. We can't see the energy
Mm-hmm.
coming off of us, but we can feel it. You can walk into a room, you can walk into your classroom and immediately say, "Oh, teacher is pissed off."
Mm-hmm.
We immediately can feel that. That's energy.
Yeah.
And the science says that we attract the energy that we resonate,
Mm-hmm.
which lends credence to positive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But the science also says that you really can't be positive if something back here is unaddressed,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So the keys are, yes, you want to emit a positive, energetic field, but you can't do it inauthentically. So when you have a negative emotion, lean into it, process it. We were talking about the physical sensation. Get in tune with where it is you're experiencing that. Depending on maybe that, maybe for me, because I feel it in my chest, this is a good exercise for me. For you, wherever you feel it, this rolling your shoulders back, if your shoulders are tense, like you can certainly, I would say, adjust how you move that energy through your body based on where you feel it. Um, so that's, and I also want to say, these hard conversations we have to have in the workplace now. Okay. Um, Notice what you feel when you have those too, because you still have to have these hard conversations. Otherwise, it's the same effect as suppressing your negative emotions. You have to have these hard conversations. Things loom. They build over time. So you do have to have them. Do you have any tips for people for that sensation they get during these hard conversations that will allow them to be more receptive and create better outcomes in these hard conversations that enable them to still have their emotions in these hard conversations, but still produce a good outcome through them?
Preparation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So prepare for these conversations. Language is critical. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Certain words convey certain tones.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a lot of questions. Usually, I have a go to person, and oftentimes it's HR because now it's can very quickly turn into a legal issue.
Yep.
And my last full time role was Jody HR. I was like, Jody, here's what happened. Here's how I see things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think about it. Here's how I think I'm going to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your perspective?
Mm-hmm.
And she would tell me, it could be this, it could be this. Have you
Mm-hmm.
thought about that? or maybe you want to tweak this a little bit, but having someone that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of, those hard conversations at work are hard because you don't want to lose anybody. I never want to lose anybody, but there are rules and there are behaviors that we have as expectations.
Yeah.
Okay. And you try to coach folks to meet those expectations, but not everybody's going to be able to meet it. And you get into those uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
But prepare, make sure you have your data as backup, document everything, and ask somebody for their perspective that can give you professional guidance on it.
Yeah. I invite people to use the C3 community
exactly.
to do just that as well.
Pop in saying, here's my situation.
Yeah.
Here's how I think I'm going to handle it. Does anybody see how I might handle it a little bit better? Or is there anything I'm missing here?
Nobody has yet used the community for that, but I do want to encourage people to do that because we have such great thought leadership, such great experience in that community. And that is the point, that we all get to benefit from that. That's the point of the whole community.
The value of that is, I don't need to go down the same street you did. If you can tell me what you experienced on that street.
Yeah.
Right. So that I'm surprised that you're not swamped with participation because, the value of somebody else's experience for something that you're going through, whether it's anxiety, depression, a work-related issue, it's tremendous. Tremendous,
I hope we're not there right now. We're still growing, but we're growing in engagement as well. And I haven't formally invited people to use the group that way, but now I will. When I share this and the recap, I'll definitely make sure people understand that this is a community you can use for that. And I hope that Lawrence and I have done a good job of creating psychological safety within the group, so that people can feel it's a safe place to bounce those things off of, to get different perspectives before they go into those hard conversations, which are necessary.
Let's talk about one other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about being vulnerable, and we're talking about all that stuff. Okay. And we're talking about this psychological safety, right?
Yeah.
My personality is such that I've never had a problem doing that. I'll feel bad. Listen, I really screwed this up. I am so sorry. Here's what I did to fix it. But the leader's response to when you're vulnerable, so it works both ways.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're in a leadership position and you want people to be vulnerable, do not punish them for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's okay. It looks like you fixed it. It's not going to happen again. Follow me?
Yeah.
But I've talked to so many people who said, yeah, I really screwed that up. I totally forgot about it. I went to my boss. He threw a 7. I'm on PIP plan. Okay. So we have to really build into our leaders the expectation that things are not perfect. Brene Brown, thinking that everything is going to be
she comes up everyone too.
Right?
She comes up all the time. Yeah.
Plan for stuff to go wrong because it will. The idea is how I want my team to share with me something that they think is going to go wrong ASAP because I can help troubleshoot it. I'm not going to punish you.
Yeah.
Right?
The connection between having a culture of accountability and having psychological safety and enabling vulnerability. I mean, that's a huge insight right there. If you can't have your team be honest when something's wrong about them personally or their performance, how can you keep them accountable? How can you help them? How can you guide them? How can you get them to the next level?
There's really not enough focus on the corporate side on the value of screw-ups or mess-ups.
Yeah.
Okay? It is the source of innovation.
Yes.
We weren't looking for sticky notes. We were looking for glue, but we got stickies now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it happens, but it's got to be okay to fail.
Yes.
I think Edison tried to create the light bulb 6,000 times before he figured it out. So there is value in failure, and you know, it has to be okay to share, you know, but again, balance. We don't want our days to be everybody boo-hooing, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be some balance here, and
Let's talk about that. You know, when you have Cy Wakeman is another leader that comes up all the time, and she talks about no drama in the workplace. You know, asking questions to help people shift from their ego to the higher mind. Brilliant stuff. We love her. There's also the expectation that if you're able to switch between, how am I going to word this? I need to think about how the connection I was just about to make. And we have 5 minutes left. Hit on another topic, and I'm hoping I can put this together before we end here.
So are you trying to get at a leader's ability?
Morale. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. When you enable people to express their negative emotion, how do you also make sure that the negative emotion doesn't overwhelm the morale of your team?
Again, psychological safety.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in a situation in a team meeting. I had a direct report that was assigned to a project working with another team. And he came in and he told this horrible story about what happened to him, you know, and it kind of blew up. And I'm like, oh my God, everything that I've done with this team for the last 6 months, I felt like the balloon was just sucking in because I created such positive change there. And then I'm thinking to myself, I have to do something for this guy. That's not right. But what we wound up doing is we addressed it as a team, and I let everybody say their piece. Okay. And I didn't want that to spread into my team. And I was honest about what I could and could not do for that guy, because he reported to me working for somebody else, reported up. And I asked for feedback from the group. And I specifically stated, I don't want this event to tarnish what we have built here. And how can we not get tarnished by this experience? And people started popcorning. That's one thing I do. I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I just jotted down what I heard, took it back, looked at it, and I scheduled an impromptu meeting. I actually came up with the idea of a SWAT team, special weapons and tactics team, to address these kind of crazy things, which gave people the opportunity to do something a little bit unique and different. Okay, so I kind of shifted the focus a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I worked hard to create this hospitable environment, and I didn't want them encroaching. So
also, I think that's a really important distinction there. What I want to you took action. That's how you prevent the expression of negative emotion from, really putting a detriment into morale so that it affects performance, is addressing, not just listening and allowing, but addressing the things that you're hearing in some way, shape, or form, or putting some kind of action plan into place.
Exactly. Yeah. I had a direct report die. The whole team was devastated.
Yeah.
And I brought them in a room. I'm like, here's what I feel like doing.
Yeah.
I think we should send flowers. I think we should go to the funeral. I think we should bring food. That's what Italians do. What do you guys think? Money came out of the wallets. We attended as a group. People cried, and then we met and we said, how are we going to make it comfortable? How are we going to make it comfortable with this loss? And we talked about it. And it was okay to talk about it. We really miss Joe. If Joe was here right now, he'd have an answer to this. So it's on the table.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement, Gavin. Yep. Keep working at it.
Yeah. Laura, thank you so much for joining me for this hour to talk about toxic positivity. The statistics you shared, the tips you shared, putting it into a context of what leaders actually experience around this talking about the trends, the skills of the future that are necessary, and people's reality too right now. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to make it today. Where can you have a book coming out in the fall, you said?
Paul.
Do you know what that's going to be called and where people are going to be able to find it?
Yes, I'll post something in it after summer's over. It's called Gaming Your Brain. How to use brain science to overcome obstacles and live your best life now. So it should be probably closer to December published. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me. I'm on there all the time. I'm happy to help with anything. This is a passion area for me. My PhD is in leadership. I'm just very passionate about doing it right so that everybody can share a piece of the pie and we can all be happy.
And if you're not in C3 right now, get into the C3 community. That's the Corporate Consciousness Co-op on LinkedIn. This is where the replay gets shared. So if you enjoyed this, if you learned something, you took something away, make sure that you invite other people to join the C3 community to get access to this. And when you come into the community, introduce yourself. Tell us what you can teach us about the success that you've had around conscious leadership. And we would love to give you a stage and give you the opportunity to share that as well. That's what the C3 community was for. Collaborating, co-creating, putting our ripples of change together to accelerate and make a more powerful conscious wave of change. Thanks again, Dr. Laura.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.